Welcome to this edition of What's the Score? Let me remind you, if you enjoyed today's podcast, please click the like button wherever you listen to this program. And if you'd like to support this and future programs, I encourage you to become a patron via patreon.com. There'll be details to follow in the middle of the program. We couldn't do the program without our patrons, so thank you. And enjoy today's wonderful podcast. Today's program made possible by patrons like you. Welcome to where we celebrate music from the movies. From the golden age to present day, we've got it all covered. We talk to those in the entertainment industry and find out about their favorite scores. You found the podcast, What's the Score? I'm your host, Frank R. Wilson. So sit back, relax, grab a popcorn, and let's see what we'll be hearing today. Recognize that music? It's a favorite of our guest today. Now, she's a product of a Filipino mother and a British father, which has created her stunning looks. She grew up in England, where she attended drama school and pursued an acting career. She's worked in theater, TV, commercials, and film. She's proficient in martial arts, and she's worked with Jean-Claude Van Damme and also been a Bond girl. Now, in addition to acting, she's hosted various travel programs, traveling to daring and unknown locations. It's also obvious that she loves film music, which is why she's with us today. Please join me in welcoming Rachel Grant to the program. Hi, Rachel.
Oh, hi, Frank. Thank you for that intro. And yes, I do love music so much.
It in our preview before we started to record this, that was obvious, and so I'm really excited to talk to you today, and I think you've made some great selections. I know our listeners will enjoy it. As my listeners do know, I always start the program the same way, and that is we want to get to know a little bit about our guest and a little bit more about their background, particularly in their early years. So I'd like to hear a little bit more if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, especially growing up and family, siblings, things like that.
Oh, yes, that's interesting. So, yes, you had mentioned my mother's from the Philippines, so I was born in the Philippines. I happened to be born there. My mother and father were there at the time. I am the middle of two sisters. They were both born in England. My father is British. And I moved to England when I was a baby, and I grew up in the town of Nottingham, which is famous for Robin Hood, as you may know.
Yes.
And Nottingham is known for having a lot of arts and theatre. So it's a wonderful city to grow up in as a child. So we were constantly surrounded by a lot of theatre, a lot of arts. Also my family, my father's family are like painters and are very artistic. As much as my father is a doctor and he's retired now, he's a wonderful painter. So there was a lot of art there. And my father loves classical music. So growing up, he constantly played a lot of classical music around the house and in his car always. And my mother, her grandmother was an opera singer. So they all knew how to sing opera in the family, and they all knew how to play piano. So when we were growing up in Nottingham, we were somewhat doing the same. We were singing a lot. We were all playing the piano in the house. We had a very, very musical house indeed. And it was rather wonderful. And growing up, being part of our local ballet school, we were part of this ballet school where we would obviously put on these theatrical shows, we would do ballet, tap, jazz, and we constantly had music around. And I don't know if you know ballet music, Tchaikovsky and Swan Lake and all these. It's absolutely fantastic. So I fell in love with that sort of music at a very young age. I wasn't really raised on typically what the children around me were being raised on, like pop. I did have pop music in my life, but not as much as like orchestral music. So that was played more than any other music in our house and around us as children.
You know, and I've mentioned it with other guests because I kind of have not exactly the same experience, but I really took to orchestral music at an early age. But I always kind of felt like an outsider because all my friends were listening to pop music. Did you ever kind of have that feeling?
So it's interesting that you say that to me. Now, obviously, we did have some pop music, but not as much as others. So when people used to say, oh, do you know this tune by blah, blah, blah? I used to go, oh, no, I haven't heard that yet. And it would always be a case, what? You've never heard of blah, blah, and so. And I used to think what planet am I living on? Then I used to tell them, so have you heard of this composer and that composer? And they wouldn't know. So I would make a point, it's what you know. Not everybody knows all music. But I actually at one point in my teenage years remember being quite conscious of the lack of singers, current singers, the names of them I knew and their songs. I did know their songs, but I didn't know the names like the other children around me knew them. But that's interesting.
It is.
Yes.
So you had a lot of music in your house, and painting you talked about, your father being a great painter. Did you ever take an interest in painting as well?
Well, I painted at school, but it's something I never really continued with and pursued. But maybe one day I will take it up again. But I do collect art, like real paintings. My younger sister, who's also an actor and dancer, she paints. And my older sister, she is a ballet teacher in London, in West London, and she has quite a successful school. So we all emerged in the arts. Music and the theatrics really brought so much out of us, and we've continued to remain in the arts.
Yeah. Let's dive into some of the scores that you had talked about, and I want to get back to your life here in a minute because there's some interesting things that you had said. One thing that I loved when you shared with me some of the selections you wanted to play, you talked about a film called Fiddler on the Roof, and you had a real affinity for that for a couple of reasons. I guess it had a personal connection as well as just that you liked the music, and you also made a point of saying that while it was a Broadway production where songs were already written, John Williams not only worked on the film as an arranger and conductor, but he also composed some original pieces of music. There were two things I was going to play here: the main title, which John Williams had a hand in composing, and then also one of the songs featured in the film called Sunrise Sunset. Tell us a little bit about why you chose those, music from Fiddler on the Roof. What is it that you like about it?
So Fiddler on the Roof was played, the film was played to me at quite a young age. I must have been as young as maybe 5 or 6.
Okay.
And it features, obviously, this Rep Tevye, his name is Tevye, and his children. Now, he had 3 girls. Well, he had more than 3 girls, actually. He had 5 girls. And 3 of the older sisters, I was able to somehow relate to them. They're kind of featured in the plot quite a bit because I was one of 3 sisters also. So at a young age, I could relate to that. And the middle sister of the 3 older sisters had red hair, and I thought she was beautiful. And I was the middle of my 3 sisters. So at a young age of like 6 years old, I'm watching this, and I love different people and I love different culture. I've always been interested in different people. I love that we're different in the world, and I'd never seen like a family like this. They were a Jewish family living quite differently. I was brought up quite strict as a Catholic. I went to a school with a nun that was the principal. Mm-hmm. And it was very interesting for me to see a different way of life. My mother was from the Philippines, my father was British, so I was raised with 2 very different cultures in England. So for me to see this in a film, I think this was the first time I was seeing such a different culture, and the music was so different too. I was fascinated by the film and the music, and at the beginning, there is this violin player that's standing on a roof playing the violin, and I just couldn't figure out why he was standing on the roof. I was like, why is it? To me, it was just bizarre. And I just remember the piece of music having so many different emotions within me at such a young age. It was scary, it was exciting, it was happy. I remember it so clearly. And I just remember knowing the movie was very sad in many ways, but very happy too, and it finished in a positive way. And everything worked out. And yes, so I loved the music from that film. And when I got married 5 years ago, I needed to pick a piece of music that would just work for me and for my family. And I knew for my mother it would mean so much. And I didn't tell anyone that Sunrise Sunset from Fiddler on the Roof would be the music played at my wedding. And as soon as it started to play, I felt terrible, by the way, Frank. My mother started to break down with so many tears, and it's on the video. She just could not contain herself. And she said that music just brought back so many memories from our childhood. And it was very, very difficult. Oh, I could not believe that could move her so much. So the final video we have of my wedding, you can see her just like breaking down, and the music is just so powerful with that.
Oh, bless her heart.
I know. I felt so terrible suddenly. I was like, oh my gosh, this really moved her in ways I did not expect.
Oh, well, you certainly didn't mean it in a...
No, it was quite... Way. I know it was, because I got married in Israel, and I wanted my family to go to the Holy Land. They're from the Philippines. It's very important for Filipinos to visit the Holy Land, being the only Catholic country, Christian country in Asia, in the Far East. So I brought all my family there, and my husband's family's Jewish, so I needed to get it to work, and it did, and it was wonderful to bring two very different families together. And we played this music from Fiddler on the Roof, and it really worked out wonderfully.
Well, let's have a listen for ourselves. We're going to play these two cues back to back. First, the main theme, the main title from the film Fiddler on the Roof that was composed by John Williams, and then the song from the film called Sunrise Sunset. Let's sit back, listen, and enjoy.
Is this the little boy at play?
I don't remember growing older. When did they?
When did she get to be a beauty? When did he grow to be so tall?
Wasn't it yesterday when they were small?
Sunrise, sunset, sunrise, sunset, swiftly flow the days. Seedlings turn overnight to sunflowers, blossoming even as we gaze.
Sunrise, sunset, sunrise, sunset, swiftly fly the years. One season following another, laden with happiness and tears.
What words of wisdom can I give them? How can I help to ease their way?
Now they must learn from one another, day by day.
They look so natural together.
Just like two newlyweds should be.
Is there a canopy in store for me?
Sunrise, sunset, sunrise, sunset, swiftly fly the years. One season following another, laden with happiness.
You talked about growing up in a family that was very connected to the arts, and you obviously were drawn to acting because you ended up going to drama school in London. What was it that drew you to acting?
So we started, I mentioned ballet class at
Right.
quite a young age. So that involved a lot of performing. And the ballet teacher gave me lots of opportunities to speak in their ballet plays. But prior to that, we actually went to speech therapy lessons, elocution lessons, because we were growing up in Nottingham, and they have a very strong accent in Nottingham. It's a northern accent. And I remember we went to London to visit our relatives. We came back, and my grandmother, who spoke beautiful English, she couldn't believe that I said that. I went to Buckingham Palace, and I got on a bus. So she wanted us to have elocution lessons so we could speak more beautifully, like the Queen's English, I suppose.
Yes.
And my grandmother, who spoke very good English, and beautiful, she also recommended, my sister Angela, you see, had a stutter, a slight stammer and slight stutter, and she wanted to improve on that. So she needed to go to classes, and Angela didn't want to go by herself, so I went along. And this is very, very early on. I think I was 4 years old. My sister Angela would have been 5 or 6. So at these elocution lessons, we would put on little plays within the class, and we would learn prose and script. So I got a love for like speaking out aloud and performing at quite a young age. And I also was a very shy little girl, and to get on stage was a very, very, very big deal for me. It was very nerve-wracking. But the moment I got on stage and I was able to overcome those nerves, it was most exciting and exhilarating. So I kind of like got addicted to that, and I kind of felt I needed it because I was too shy. And my mother and my sister, we all needed that for some reason. We were very shy children.
Isn't it interesting? You always hear so much about actors in particular that, in private life they're so shy. It seems like such a contradiction, I guess. How can you be shy in your personal life and then so open and honest and whatever in acting? I mean, does that make sense what I'm talking about?
Yes, I don't know how it works, but it's almost like I want to be the opposite of who I am. And I was so shy as a little girl, and still am sometimes. Sometimes if I walk into a room and there's a lot...
I'm sorry, you're having a hard time making me believe in that the way you're...
Yes, no. When I walk into a room and there's a lot of people there, sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, And then I just have to kind of think, no, you're here, let's rise to the occasion. And, it's funny, right? But I think nerves are good. Like before I would go on stage or before I would go on a big set, for example, I would get so nervous. But nerves are good. Without those nerves, it does not give me the oomph to perform. So I need that adrenaline. And it's like a drug. I guess we get addicted to it. That experience, that feeling of getting out in front of people and performing. And it's that feeling that keeps me wanting to go back and wanting more of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I understand. Another cue that you chose, and it was funny because when I was looking at the things you had sent me that you wanted to play, and I started to think about it, I think maybe one of the most spectacular openings to a movie ever is the beginning of Sound of Music. I don't know what it is, but those images, and of course Julie Andrews' angelic voice in the song is just amazing. And one of the things you chose was the main theme, the main title from Sound of Music. Tell me a little bit about why you like that.
That movie has to be one of my favorite movies of all time. Again, we were introduced to it at a very, very young age, and being one of 3 sisters, I could... I think there's so many different ages in that movie. Whatever age you are, you can relate to somebody. So I could relate to the little girls in the film, and Julie Andrews and that voice. Oh, I love Julie Andrews and those songs. They're so uplifting. Yeah. And they're in the middle of this crazy war and story, and I could relate to so much in the film. For example, she made dresses out of the curtains, if you remember. Yep. And she sings this song, raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens. She sings that song, right? And then she takes the curtains. She has the idea to take the curtains and make them into dresses. So growing up, my grandmother, because she grew up in the war too, and she said that in England you had to just make do and mend. She would often take the curtains, often take the old blankets and make them into dresses. So growing up, my grandmother and my mother made dresses for us, made from curtain fabric. We had all those experiences and so all my clothes were made by my mother and all my grandmother. So I could relate to so much in that film. And of course, we went to a Catholic school, and the principal at the school, the head teacher, was a nun, and Maria was part of this. She was, she wanted to be a nun, and obviously she became a nanny. And we actually had living with us in a house, and she came with us from the Philippines. We had a nanny living with us. She still actually lives in England. She lived with us for years. So there were so many things I could relate to in the movie. And I learned all the songs. I learned all the words to all the songs in that movie, and it would set my heart on fire. And when I would be in the mountain, we'd go and visit my grandfather who lived in the south of France. I would run along the mountaintops in the Pyrenees and go, "The hills are alive with the sound of music."
You know, I was waiting to see how long it would take for you to start singing, and I think I guessed a few minutes short.
Oh, right. But, I could have picked so many songs from that
I know.
film. I wanted to pick Climb Every Mountain. That's a fantastic song. And,
It is.
oh,
Well,
I love it.
And let me share with you a little piece of interesting history for me.
yes.
I lived in my wife and I owned a bed and breakfast in Stowe, Vermont for a few years, and we were just down the mountain from the Von Trapp family lodge. Now, I never did get to meet Maria. She had passed by the time we were there, but I always heard countless stories about her. But Johannes was one of their children.
You mean the original,
yeah.
the lady that wrote about her family, the Von Trapp family,
Right,
the
yeah.
memoir?
Yeah, Maria.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she used
that's
to,
fantastic.
She used to, live at the lodge and welcome guests and stuff like that. I knew one of her sons, Johannes. Literally, they lived less than a mile away, and we got to know some of the Von Trapp family. So it was actually kind of neat that we had that history with them. And
That is so amazing.
yeah, you should go visit. They have a beautiful, I don't know if I want to call it a museum, but they certainly have a room that's dedicated to the Von Trapp family and their history and whatnot. And both the captain and Maria are.
Oh, that's
buried
so
there and
interesting.
stuff, so.
I didn't know actually they kept something there. I always think of Salzburg. I've never been, but I know you can do like the Sound of Music tour and see all the original spots they sang songs. So like I would never do a trip just for a movie, but I would go there for that because
Well, go visit Stowe. It's not that far from where you live. Stowe,
really?
Vermont's like an 8-hour drive or whatever. And you should go and stay at the Trapp family lodge. Look it up.
Oh yes, that would be wonderful. I would have to look it up now you've told me about it.
And
yes.
when you go there, you'll drive by the place we used to have as well. I'll tell you more about that off the show. Let's go ahead and play this for ourselves. This again is the main title from the film, Sound of Music. Just a magical piece of music, and it's sung by the angelic Julie Andrews.
Have sung for 1,000 years. The hills fill my heart with the sound of music. My heart wants to sing every song it hears. My heart wants to beat like the wings of the birds that rise from the lake to the trees. My heart wants to sigh like a chime that flies from a church on a breeze, to laugh like a brook when it trips and falls tumbles over stones on its way to sing through the night like a lark who is learning to pray. I go to the hills when my heart is lonely. I know I will hear what I've heard before. My heart will be blessed with the sound of music, and I'll sing once more.
As my listeners know, I don't expect you to know necessarily, but I'm a huge James Bond fan, and have been since as a little boy. I saw a golden girl lying naked on a bed in Goldfinger in 1965 is when I saw it, and I've been a fan ever since, so it tells you how old I am. But I've always loved the films, and one of the reasons why I had found out about you and took an interest in you was obviously you had been connected to a James Bond film, and so I'm kind of curious. Tell me about what was that experience like of working on a James Bond film. I've always heard what a high class operation it is.
Oh yes, it is superb to work on a Bond set. Everyone is so professional, and I honestly feel like I'm the luckiest girl in the world to have had that experience, because I'm still living and breathing almost that role today. Like, I'm always involved with all sorts of events, charity projects off the back of that. So I'm so grateful for that opportunity, and to have worked with Pierce Brosnan, James Bond himself. He was wonderful. So I spent 3 days at Pinewood Studios on the 007 set with Pierce Brosnan, and with the most exceptional and professional team I've ever worked with. And I've worked with some very, very good people in the TV and film world, but these guys were tremendous, and it's something that I will hold close to my heart forever, and I really mean that. I feel so lucky and privileged to have experienced that. And by the way, Frank, I did not know you were a Bond fan until when? Can you guess? Do you know when?
No. What?
So when you invited me on the podcast, I had no idea you liked James Bond, and then I had to email you, and you sent me your email address, and on the email address it had 007 on it, and I'm like, aha, Bond fan.
Yeah, that kind of gave it away.
It did. I didn't know, because I was suddenly wondering why you were asking me. I'm not a composer, and I wondered. So that answered my thought.
It's not just because you were in a Bond film.
No, I know.
I think you have an interesting career in life, and
yes,
and that's all part of it. Yeah, and I think it surprises a lot of people, and that's one of the things that surprised me as I got involved in the acting biz, if you will. Your scene is I don't know how many minutes it was. It wasn't 10 minutes, but it was a few minutes. I think people would be surprised to know it took 3 days to get that done.
Yes, it usually is. I think for that kind of movie, it's usually 1 minute that they film per day.
Right.
I think that's kind of the standard. So the scene is over a minute. Well, there's also a scene there's also the conversation that's held with Mr. Chang, who comes out of the mirror. So, so it takes about 3 days to do that. The first day was half a day of fitting and getting costumed up, doing walking around on set, getting a feel of it, rehearsing with Pierce. I do believe we did film on that day too, at the morning, and then we filmed on the second day and on the third day. So interestingly, it does take quite a bit of time. The time that goes into this and the thought, it is it's spectacular what they do in these Bond movies and how they piece it all together. So, yes, you'd be surprised. I was very surprised it was 3 days also.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. And by the way, and I hope you, I'm going to embarrass myself a little bit. I hope you don't mind me saying this. There's a few times when I've watched a movie where someone will come on the screen, a woman, and my jaw will drop. Your scene was one of them. You were stunning.
Oh, that's
I don't
very
know who did your
kind.
makeup and
Oh, that's very kind of you to mention that. So the wardrobe was done by Lindy Hemming, who is an Oscar winner, a nominee. She's a British costume lady. She is fantastic. I had actually worked with her before. I worked with her on Tomb Raider with Angelina Jolie. I was Angelina Jolie's body double.
Really?
Like a year and a half before I did Die Another Day. I worked on that film for 12 days, over a month. Lindy Hemming, she fitted me so many different clothes that Angelina Jolie wore, because apparently we have the same measurements, at the time at least. And when she saw me, when I arrived on the 007 set and I walked in and she saw me, she knew exactly who I was. She said, I looked at the name, who was playing this character, and I knew who you were, Rachel. So when I walked in, she went, Rachel Grant, you have gone from body double to Bond girl. And I just was like, oh my God, really? I'm a Bond girl. She was the first person that called me a Bond girl, because it didn't really kind of sit in my head that I was going to be like a Bond girl. And when she told me that, I was really excited. I was like, Bond girl, no way. Because, growing up, my father loved James Bond, and in Britain they played the Bond movies all the time.
Oh, yeah.
So I loved James Bond. My Bond growing up when I was a little girl was Roger Moore. And, some of the Roger Moore Bond movies were quite out there, like Moonraker, for example.
Right.
So I was really fascinated with James Bond, and I thought the women were strong in James Bond. They could fight him, and they were. I can remember Grace Jones being, so statuesque and strong, and I love Bond, and all the characters were larger than life, the baddies, you had Jaws, and so as a little girl, all this was very appealing. So I always loved Bond. So for me, being in a Bond movie was more than a dream come true. It was like nuts, yeah.
Well, you chose a piece of music from that, which is
I did.
entitled, interestingly enough, the title of your character, which had an interesting name. The name was Peaceful Fountains of Desire. Tell us a little bit about why you wanted to choose to play that today.
Yes, so I did not know I had my own piece of music that was composed by David Arnold,
Right.
In Die Another Day, until about a year after.
Oh, wow.
No, I know. I was at a signing for a James Bond convention, and somebody came in with the CD, the soundtrack, and they asked me to sign it, but they wanted me to sign my name next to my piece of music, as in number 8. It was number 8 in the soundtrack. And I was like, I have a piece of music, which I know they played music, in the background of my scene, but I didn't realize it was made specifically for the character and for that scene. And it is actually rather a lovely piece of music. It is used like on YouTube for various things. It is rather lovely. Very much a classical piece of music. Lovely to dance ballet to. And I was so chuffed. I was so pleased I had my own piece of music that was made by David Arnold, who's obviously a great composer in terms of film. And we have to play it, right? Surely.
Oh, yes, well, absolutely. Absolutely. We couldn't have a show without playing it with you. So let's sit back and have a listen for ourselves. This is, again, from the Bond film Die Another Day. It's a piece written by composer David Arnold, and the cue is called Peaceful Fountains of Desire. We'll get back to the program in a moment. Let me tell you, I couldn't do this program without support from listeners just like you. When you press like or comment on a particular episode, it helps grow our audience. Now, admittedly, my audience is somewhat small compared to other podcasts, but it is growing, and I thank you for that growth. Now, how else could you help me keep the podcast going? Well, by becoming a patron of the program through patreon.com. For as little as $3 a month, you help me keep the program going, plus you gain access to special bonus clips from our guests each episode. By being a patron, you could also end up being a featured guest on future episodes. So please consider becoming a patron by visiting patreon.com/whatsthescore. That's patreon.com/whatsthescore, and what's the score is all one word. Your support is valued and appreciated. Please go to patreon.com and support us today. Thank you. You've had a variety of different experiences in front of a camera, and you've also acted in live theater now, and I've had some limited experience with theater. Tell me, what's the difference between, being in front of a camera and acting and being in front of a live audience, if any kind of a difference?
Oh, yes. So I think I fell in love with acting from performing live theatre. I'm not sure it would have done it for me if I had started out as a little girl performing in front of a camera. It's quite different, As a little girl, I loved making people happy on stage. When the lights came up at the end of the show and people are clapping and their faces were beaming with these big smiles, I would think, oh, wow, they loved what we did. And I couldn't believe I'd put smiles on people's faces. And it brought so much pleasure to me that I could do that. I could make people happy. So that made me very happy to perform, and I just wanted to keep doing it. And I loved every minute of being on stage. Obviously, when you're on stage, everything is so much bigger. The performance is so much broader and wider. You're performing out there to so many people, right in front of you, up and down and to the side. And in front of a camera, the performance is very different. It's very tight, it's very small, it's more natural, right. It's more inward feeling. So it's a very, very different experience. Both are wonderful in various ways. So I love doing both, but the love for performing and acting came from performing on stage. Yes.
And what's it been like? Because I know you've been an on-camera presenter for travel logs and those sorts of things. Is that do you enjoy that work as well?
Yes, I do. I fell into that kind of work by chance. I never actually really pursued it because being a presenter, being a TV host, you're not being a character. You have to be yourself. So I always struggled with being myself a little bit.
Oh, come on, really?
Yes, I did, because I didn't know what, I was like, I'm so quirky, I'm so British, and I can say silly things, and, I am, if you know me, I'm very odd and quirky in many ways, and I'm like, how can I possibly be that in front of the camera, be myself? But, people like that. They want that personality to shine. So I've learned how to bring that out more. And the more I've learned to bring that out, the more I've been able to present and host various things. I've been very lucky to host on big shows like the Rachel Ray Show and Home and Family Show, and some news stations, various news stations in the USA. So, and on Bravo, I had a show on Bravo, 10 episodes, a travel show. So I've really enjoyed that. I've learned to love it so much, and now it's brought me far and wide. Like, I've travelled as a host, as a TV host. So I've travelled the world. So I'm traveled to over 80 countries, in fact. So
I want to talk about that a little bit later. I would like to learn more about those kind of experiences of your travels and whatnot. Another one of the films that you chose, another classic musical with just loaded with great songs, is The King and I.
Oh.
And one of the songs that you wanted to highlight was Getting to Know You, which is, again, what a classic, and everybody can hum that melody and whatnot. Tell me a little bit about why you wanted to choose that to play today for our audience.
Right, so King and I, another Rodgers and Hammerstein, like Sound of Music, was another musical, big part of my childhood. I must have watched it 100 times. I've also been in the stage show.
Wow.
Yeah, so being half Filipino, I was able to relate in many ways to the Far Eastern, to the Asian, the clash in culture. That's part of the story. I was fascinated. Deborah Kerr, who plays the governess. She is British. Then you have the King of Siam, who is played by Yul Brynner. By the way, I think I saw a clip of that recently, and Yul Brynner is beautiful. Obviously, as a little girl, I'm not thinking those things, but he was amazing choice for that. Wow. So I was able to appreciate the clash of cultures in this story, and it fascinated me. I knew Thai dancing. Growing up, we did it in our dance school, so we would watch the Thai dancing in the movie many times. I love the difference in music, the blend of the Thai with the obviously the composition by Rodgers and Hammerstein, and the song "Getting to Know You." I just thought was very delightful. We sung it as children, and it involved all the children of the King of Siam, and which obviously is Thailand now. And I just think it's a wonderful little song, and they dance in it. There's a little Thai dance that happens in the middle of it by one of the wives, where she takes a fan and she would flip it up and she does a little Thai dance and play with it. Oh my goodness, I had a fan. I took my mother's fan and I was flipping it up and down and singing this song, getting to know you, getting to know all about you. And I love Deborah Kerr's voice, and she actually has, her voice is, because I have a bit of an operatic voice, anything that she sings fits my voice, at least now. Maybe not when I was much younger. So I particularly love singing anything she sings from this movie, because it just sits so well with me, and I find it so easy. I found my voice in her. And Julie Andrews.
Yeah. You know what? I'm starting to think we need to do a part 2 of this episode, and we'll just have you sing. I don't know.
Oh, I would love to try that. I have sung professionally, but I haven't sung professionally for a long time. I did do Aladdin the pantomime when I was 18 years old.
Wow.
And I was in musical theatre class in Saigon School, Miss Saigon. So I know so many musical songs, and I love them. Yes.
Yeah. Well, let's have a listen for ourselves. This
yes.
is from a film called The King and I, and the song is called Getting to Know You. Sit back and enjoy.
It's a very ancient saying, but a true and honest thought, that if you become a teacher, by your pupils you'll be taught. As a teacher I've been learning, you'll forgive me if I boast, and I've now become an expert on the subject I like most, getting to know you. Getting to know you, getting to know all about you, getting to like you, getting to hope you like me, getting to know you, putting it my way, but nicely. You are precisely my cup of tea. Getting to know you, getting to feel free and easy. When I am with you, getting to know what to say. Haven't you noticed, suddenly I'm bright and breezy because of all the beautiful and new things I'm learning about you day by day. Getting to know you, getting to know all about you. Getting to like you, getting to hold you like me. Getting to know you, putting it my way, but nicely. You are precisely my cup of tea. Getting to know you, getting to feel free and easy. When I am with you, getting to know what to say. Haven't you noticed, suddenly I'm bright and breezy because of all the beautiful and new things I'm learning about you day by day. Getting to know you, getting to feel free and easy. When I am with you, getting to know what to say. Haven't you noticed, suddenly I'm bright and breezy because of all the beautiful and new things I'm learning about you day by day. Getting to know you, getting to feel free and easy. When I am with you, getting to know what to say. Haven't you noticed, suddenly I'm bright and breezy because of all the beautiful and new things I'm learning about you day by day.
We mentioned a little bit about you being a TV host, especially with traveling to different countries. And anybody who follows you on social media, I don't know if these are old trips or whatever, or if you're just constantly on the go, but it seems like you're always in a different part of the world with the pictures that you post and those sorts of things. And I used to travel quite a bit myself, and I just loved the experience. And so I'm kind of curious if you'd talk to me a little bit about your travels, and if there was, I don't know, maybe if there were any one or two, maybe even three countries that just really left an impression on you after you had visited them.
Oh, yes. So I am addicted to travel. I literally have a separate little bank account and I save money just for travel. I love the experience with it. I love the further away it is and the more different it is to where I live, the better it is for me. I love it. So the more extreme the weather, the more different the people, the food, that's what gets me going. So
How
you said it.
fascinating.
Yeah, the more different it is. I think it's got something to do with my upbringing, growing in England, where I grew up, where we had very cold winters. The summers were very mild. It rains a lot in England,
Right.
and it's very green. And then going back to the Philippines almost every year or every other year as a child, and being exposed to completely different culture, climate, the people are different, the food is very different. I remember getting off the plane when I was 4 years old, and in those days they didn't have like a bridge that attached to the airport. We'd have to go down the stairway, and I remember I was waiting with my father, holding his hand. They opened the door of the plane. We were already out of our seat, I remember that. And the tropical smell and the heat hit my face. And I remember being shocked instantly.
Yeah.
Being shocked. And I just got so excited. I can never forget that feeling. And I just held my father's hand tight. And I look for that. It's such a thrill for me to feel that. And I really, really look for that. And so the more different the people and the places, the architecture, everything about it, the more I love the place. And so I have, I like ancient peoples too, like people that have continued doing something and that still live the way they've been living for many, many years. So I like communities where they're still living like tribally and like in small communities, like parts of the Philippines are like that still, not much. I enjoyed my experiences in Kenya and Tanzania with, the communities there, the Maasai communities. I'm thinking of my time in the Amazon rainforest. I loved being with the people, the indigenous people living there, that they live so beautifully. And I know, maybe I'm nuts, but I do love experiencing that, seeing how they live and being around them. I thrive off that for some reason.
I almost think you have to have that kind of attitude if you're going to travel to the kind of places that you have, and to be open to those things. You don't necessarily have to, I don't know, what am I trying to say here? I mean, you don't have to say, oh gosh, I could move here. I mean, you may not want to do that, but at the same time, it's like, wow, this is really interesting, and I'm really, I'm getting a lot out of this.
Yeah, it's so different. I love that it's so different. The feeling, the emotions that it creates inside me. Maybe that's what I feed off and live off, those with the acting as well. It's those emotions, that feeling. I like those different sensations going through my body. So, yes, isn't that funny?
Yeah, now I've got... my memory, I hope my memory's not off here. I've got to ask you about this then, especially being from the Philippines. Isn't there an unusual food? Let me see here if I can remember how to do it.
Balut.
Is that the egg?
Yes.
Okay.
You are right.
Have you tried that? And
of
what's
course.
That like?
Yes, I've eaten that many times.
Oh my. I don't know if I could go that far.
It is actually rather delicious, and I wouldn't think anything of it because I've been around it for so long. But I remember it was on Fear Factor, the TV show, where they had to make the contestants eat that once, and that was the first time I realized, oh, this is so funny that people find it like odd and like it's hard to eat, because it never even, when it's so like familiar to you, you don't see it as that. So I remember thinking, wow, I can't believe this is like so odd to people, but I get why it would be. And
well,
yes,
now,
it is delicious.
For our listeners that maybe don't know what we're talking about,
I
'cause
should
don't know if you've
explain.
done that. What is it exactly?
It is an egg. It's a duck embryo inside an egg, and it's fully cooked, and the duck is whole. The baby duck, it's a little chicklet inside. So you would break it and eat it. So yes, unfortunately, there is a little baby chick inside that. Yes.
I'm sorry, I just get. I mean, when I lived in China, I mean, I had to eat jellyfish and some other weird stuff, but I don't know if I can go so far as what that is. But but I love your description of it and the fact that you enjoyed it and it's like it. It's part of your life. It's a part of your
Yes.
mixed culture. That's really something.
It's interesting because some Filipinos, they don't eat it. They really don't. It's almost like it's become a thing now. But there are many, of course, that do.
Yeah. You chose another piece of music that is a particular favorite of mine. It's hard to describe the emotions that it brings up, but it was part of a very powerful film, but it was a very unusual approach to film music at the time. I'm talking about Chariots of Fire and the composer Vangelis, who went on to have a very successful career. I loved a lot of his music and films. You chose the main theme from Chariots of Fire. Tell us a little bit about why you wanted to share that with our audience today.
So growing up, my father used to have this soundtrack that he used to play all the time. Well, it was a compilation of so many different movie tunes, the main theme tunes. Everything from it had Superman in there, E.T., Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Jaws. And it's funny because I remember it. By the way, that is a great way to introduce children to classical music, to play theme tunes and music from movies.
Agreed.
These were all my favorite movies, and the sounds were so exhilarating. And I remember looking at the track once and all the different songs, and I noticed most of the songs on there were composed by John Williams. I was like, wow, this is just John Williams. But on that track, there were a few others that weren't by John Williams, and one of them was Chariots of Fire. And my father used to play this tune, and we used to have quite a big garden growing up, like a backyard, as you would say in the USA. We call them gardens in England. And it used to have a huge kind of stairway that would lead down to the garden. And I used to stand at the top of the stairway. It was so high. We lived very high up in a place called Mapley Top in England, in Nottingham. And I used to, when this Chariots of Fire music would come out, I felt like Superman. I felt like I would actually start crouching down like I was about to do a race. I don't know. I would run really slowly. I would do the slow motion. I'd go, slow motion, running. And I used to reenact this motion of running and then stand at the top of the stairway, a bit like Rocky, I suppose, like I'd won the race. I don't know why, but it made me feel so powerful and amazing. And I was very athletic as a kid. I was in all the sports teams, and I did very well at sports, so it was a real motivational piece for me, and I love it. And I was thinking it's the Olympics this year, and I was fascinated by this Greek composer. He also did Blade Runner, and it wasn't made by John Williams, but I didn't know this actually until this week. John Williams composed the official fanfare music for the Olympics.
Oh yeah, that's a fabulous piece of music.
Yes, it is. It's fabulous. Maybe I did know it and I forgot about it, but the Chariots of Fire was used in the opening of the Olympics when it was in London in 2012. I don't know if you saw the opening, but Mr. Bean was playing the note, and I just roared with laughter when I saw that. And this music is fantastic, and it's also very different, I think.
And you talked about being athletic. I mean, and I mentioned in the intro that you've practiced martial arts. Is that something you're still very active in?
Less so than what I was, for one main reason. My teacher, who I used to have private tuition with, online and in person, he passed away very suddenly.
Oh.
He wasn't so old either. He wasn't old at all, and we were supposed to go that year. He passed away to the Philippines. I used to assist teach with him. So I haven't really found a replacement teacher, so I practice by myself. I have videos that he recorded for me that I use sometimes. I'm hoping to... I've been on the lookout for a teacher. I don't have one in my community or nearby, so I'm hoping it will present itself at some point. But I do have all the equipment. I'm actually sitting now in my gym. I have punch bags. I've got all my weaponry on the wall. I practice Filipino martial arts, which starts with a weapon, with a stick in your hand, and not with an empty hand. So you work your way backwards to the empty hand. So I do enjoy doing it still. And, I'd like to do it more, and I expect at some point it will happen again.
Okay, well, I'm not gonna fool around you. Then, I'll tell you that.
Yes, you better not. No, I'm joking.
Let's have a listen to this inspiring piece of music. This is again from the film Chariots of Fire, written by composer Vangelis. Have you ever seen like a rough cut of a movie that didn't have any music to it yet? And did you notice what an impact music makes?
Yes. It really can change an entire film, an entire scene. It is nuts. The music is so much more important than you could possibly imagine. Nowadays, I do, in my spare time, I do a lot of, I film a lot of commercials, like online commercials for various products, and I edit them myself, and I add music to them. And the music will change, the commercial will change what I'm editing. Like, it is night or day. Like, more than any other part of the edit, the music makes more difference than anything. It is nuts how important it is.
It is. Scenes just fall flat without
Oh my
without
goodness.
the music. It's really something.
I've seen, like, for example, like horror films. I like horror. I didn't throw that in the mix because it complicated my list too much. But it's amazing how you can use like some creepy music, and I love it when I can't think off the top of my head. Some of the horror films, they don't use creepy music in a scene, but they use like uplifting, elevating music during like a murder scene or where there's lots of blood and gore. It could be like Somewhere Over the Rainbow or something like that, and it works. It's just fantastic. I love how it does that. I know, because obviously to whoever's involved, that's the feel. Oh, you know what I mean, right?
Oh,
Yes.
absolutely.
Anyway, what were you going to say? Because I butted in, I got carried away.
No. It is amazing how because I have had a chance to see some rough cuts. In fact, I saw a rough cut of a Bond movie, and it didn't have music, and it was like, wow, this is like really bad.
I know.
But it wasn't. You know, when you added the
I
music, it really adds
know.
an element to it that's amazing.
Oh my! I know, it's nuts, isn't it?
Now-
you take the music away, and the scene's just not what it was.
Yeah. Now, you grew up and lived for a big portion of your life, I guess, in the UK. But then, I'd be kind of curious. I know that you eventually moved to the United States. You lived in LA for a while. Now, I believe you live in New York City or that area. How do you? Well, first of all, why the move, and then second of all, how are you finding life in the United States?
Yeah, so I fell in love with American movies growing up as a little girl in the 80s and 90s. The American culture, the film industry, for me it was fantastic. So I always had this dream to move to America. I always did. You know, I think America's a great country. There's lots about it that I love. It's a big country. Great Britain is a wonderful country too, but at a certain point, I knew that I would move to America. Now, it's not easy to move to America. It's very, very hard to get a green card, to get citizenship. And I know other actors that had tried to do it and had failed, and they'd moved to America or tried to get citizenship or remain there, and they weren't able to.
Huh.
But yes, it's a very, very difficult. It's not so easy. Unless, of course,
is your husband American by any chance?
he is, but I didn't move to. I moved to America and got my green card before I met him.
Okay,
So
okay.
as soon as I was in Die Another Day, and I became like international, so to speak, because it was shown everywhere, and I'd done some TV shows that went internationally. I did a bit of research on living in America, and I felt that I had enough to get me a green card. So I actually was correct. I moved to Los Angeles in 2006. I managed to get a green card fairly easily. I got an O1 visa first. I moved in under an O1 visa, which covers athletics, it covers the arts, and it covers what's the other thing it covers? I forget. I think it's science.
Okay.
So if you're like a budding scientist, an astronaut, or you're really international with the arts, movies and the arts, or you are a superb athlete and you going to become a member of some US team, you can then get an O1 visa. So I was able to get mine very easily. Being in a Bond movie was my ticket. My green card lawyer said, "This is your ticket. There is no way they're going to say no," and he was right. Yeah, so I'm still on a green card. You know, I'm so funny. I can be like an American citizen, but I just, for some reason, have stayed on a green card. But yeah, that's how I was able to move. And, you know, I ended up moving to New York for various reasons. Yes, my husband is from Brooklyn and I live in New York. But I also got quite a good agent at a certain point in New York, and a hosting agent. And I was getting quite a few hosting gigs, so I did also move to New York for that reason. So that's how I ended up here.
Yeah. So, do you have a dual citizenship between the Philippines and the UK?
Yeah. So actually, so I am being born in the Philippines. I am a Filipino citizen. I am a British citizen too, and I am technically, I suppose, an American citizen, but I don't have that citizenship just yet, but I should have it. I have a green card, so I can live in 3 different countries. So, yes.
Wow, that's something.
Yeah. So I'm very lucky.
So, Rachel, I'm sure our listeners would like to know what's in the future for you, and do you have any kind of like future projects or appearances or anything like that you'd like to share with the audience?
Oh, yes, I've got all sorts of things that are bubbling along, attached to one movie here. I work on commercials. I do a lot of commercial production for various brands and products. I've got a lot of travels in my future, couple of auditions coming up, so when something does come along that might be relevant, perhaps I can come back again.
I'd love that. And again, because of my affinity with James Bond, I understand you're going to be making an appearance at an event that's called Gatherall. I guess that's next month in New Jersey. You're going to be making an appearance there. Is that right?
Did you know about that?
Well, it was posted on Facebook actually this morning.
Oh, really? I haven't seen that. Yes. I will be. Oh, I didn't know that. Yes, I will be making an appearance at Gatherall in New Jersey on August the 3rd.
I'm
which
jealous.
Is
I
rather
wish I could be
exciting.
there, but I'll be there in spirit. I'm glad to hear
Yes.
that you'll be there for that.
Great.
The community of Bond fans are just, well, I don't have to tell you. I'm sure you already know. They're just a really special group of people. They're just so nice, and we just share a special bond, for a pun, if you will, that is just unlike any other kind of friendship. So I'm glad you're going to be doing that. Now, if people want to follow what you have going on, how do they do that? Because I know you have a social media presence.
So I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, and my handle is Miss Rachel Grant, MISS Rachel Grant. And then I am on TikTok. I think it's Travels with Rachel is my TikTok handle, and I'm on X. I forget what that is. But yes, I am out there.
People will find you, in other words.
Yes.
Very good. Well, listen, Rachel, I can't thank you enough. You've just been so much fun to talk to, very entertaining and engaging, and I can't thank you enough for joining us today. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have.
Yes, very much. It's been a pleasure. And it's been a subject I've never spoken about on a podcast or in an interview. So thank you for making it quite different.
Well, yeah, and you know what? You should do more of it because you're very passionate and talk very, very good about it. So, again, my thanks to our guest, Rachel Grant, and obviously to all our listeners, and in particular to our patrons. We're going to be recording a short bonus clip with Rachel here for our patrons, and I hope you look forward to that. But anyway, there's not much more else for me to say other than this, that my name is Frank Wilson. My time's up. I thank you for yours. Thanks for listening to What's the Score?